Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome to the 136th session of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. We continue the study of the 18th chapter, Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, and in today's session, verses 26 to 30 will be explained by a team of speakers consisting of Dr. Sundar, Dr. Sachin, Sri Karthik, Dr. Sandhya Ravi, and Srimati Kirti. As always, our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, will share his insights and help us get more clarity with his introduction and concluding remarks. Today's verses will be chanted by Master Pranav at the end of the presentations. We start the session with a recap of the verses covered in the previous session. Over to you, Dr. Sachin sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. In the last class, we have dealt with the Rajasic and Tamasic aspect of Jnanam and Sathvik, Rajasic and Tamasic aspect of Karma. We will just revise what we learned in the last class as we see in the next slide. The first shloka, so the previous slide, sorry. The first shloka, to begin with, we already know that in 20th verse, the Sathvik Jnanam was completed. And which means the firm belief in understanding of Jivatma Paramatma Aikya, which is the central teaching of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In this verse, which goes like this, Prutaktvena tu yat jnanam nana bhavan prutak vidan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tad jnanam vidhi rajasam. Krishna is giving us the understanding of Tamasic Jnanam through 21st verse, which was explained so well by Srimati Ramaji in the last class. According to the verse, which says that the understanding of one's Sukshma Sharira as the intermediary state in the ultimate knowledge of self is considered to be Rajasic Jnanam. In Sukshma Sharira, we perceive both the internal and external world through our mind, and thus it's related to our attachment and detachment to Antara and Bahaya Jagat. Other factors mentioned in this particular verse is that we see things in multitude or difference, Nana Bhavenaha, as jivas are plural and not singular. And this is due to our ignorance, which creates this disharmony in one's individual mind. Prutak Vedena, apparent jiva jagat is considered to be real, but we all know through Satvik Jnanam that it's none other than one, as is the ocean and wave equate to none other than water. So this is all about the splintered knowledge of a Rajasic person. Knowing about this Jnanam, we should understand that one should not miss the undivisible Atman in all of us because of our likes and dislikes or hate or love. Going to the next verse, this shloka goes as Yattu Krutsna Vade Kasmin Karya Saktama Hetukam Atatvartha Vadal Pancha Tattamasam Udaratam. Krishna explains Tamasic Jnanam in the verse, and in fact, it's the most common Jnanam which people have. This verse was explained so well by Dr. Ahalya in the last class. She is so well explained and summarized by saying that until we follow the spiritual pursuit of understanding the higher self, our world starts and ends with only I, me, and myself. Next slide. Tamasam udharatam tat. This tamasic knowledge is said to be that yat tu saktam, which is attached, ekasmin karyam, to the individual body, prusnavat, meaning as this individual body is the whole, and actually this body is ahetukam, which is unreasonable, and atatvartavat, that's untruthful, and alpam means pity or minuscule, and such believer is said to be tamasic person. Swamiji clearly says about such a person is a blind man trying to see this entire world through the other four senses, and it's no use to teach any spirituality to such an atheist. And thus Krishna also says, better not to argue with such personality, who ekasmin karya saktaha, those who identify only with the stula sharira for everything around them. In the next slide, we see verse 18.23. This was so explained by Dr. Anupama ma'am in the last class, which goes like this: Niyatam sangarahitam aragavad ara Niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshatam krutam afala prepsuna karma yatat tamasam yatat satvikam uchate. This was explained by Dr. Anupama ma'am in the last class, which is the starting of new topic named as karma karmana traividyam, or the threefold karmas. And starting with this verse, it describes Sathvik karma, which is niyatam, obligatory, which is sangarahitam, that's without any attachment, and araga dveshatam, which is not bound with likes and dislikes. And most importantly, afala prepsunaha, without any expectations. When one does such a karma, it's called Sathvik karma. Any other karma than this is not considered to be Sathvik. Why it should be Sathvik? Because this will give us Chitta Shuddhi, which is the stepping stone for self-transformation. Jnana Yogyata Prapti. Swamiji also says, if we don't do this type of karma, we will be under the clutches of Raga Dvesha, likes and dislikes, and we will be swaying away from the right path. That is the binary format. And this is the central theme of Bhagavad Gita teachings. With that, we move ahead to what is Rajasic karma in the next slide. Yattu kamepsuna karma sahankarenna vapuna priyate bahulayasam tadrajasam rudartam. This verse was explained by Sri Shivkumarji. It is self-explanatory. Yattuhu, even though those karma which are kamepsuna, driven by our desires, due to ahankara, our ego or pride, and which has been bahulayasam, meaning lots of efforts and stress are required to do these karmas. Punah, again and again, is called Tamasic, Rajasic karmas. This karma takes us away from the right path, the spiritual path, and brings our downfall. It will give the avaranaha, coverings to our real self, and sway us away in the wide samsaric ocean, where there are several high and low tides representing the punya and papa phalam, and finally leading away from the calmness of the binary format, represented here by the deep ocean silence, towards the triangular format of waves, ocean, and water, entangling us in the superficial shores of birth and rebirth, again and again in the cyclical format. So we need to be aware of such karmas in daily life and move towards Sathvik karmas. In the next slide, we see Anubandham kshayam himsam anaveksham cha paurusham mohadarabhyate karma yat tamasam uchyate. The last verse of previous class goes this way. And this verse was explained by Dr. Sanjay Malhotra, in which we saw about the negative karma or tamasic karma. Tamasic action is one in which arabhyate, undertaken due to moha or delusion, and is anavekshaha, without considering the anubandha, that is the consequences, and that which leads to kshayam, the loss or leads to himsa, the harm to oneself or society, and also of the paurusham, the individual capacity is decreased. This one is the worst form of action due to ignorance of higher self, not only leading to harm of oneself, but also to the society in general. With this, the recap of last class is concluded. And after understanding the three different jnanam and three different karmas, in today's class, we enter into the kartas, the doers. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin, for giving us a recap of the verses that we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. There is one thing that Swamiji keeps talking again and again as to what is this triangular format and what is binary format. I will put all my thoughts once again so that all of us students of Vedanta who have been in these classes for some time should be able to have a clear understanding of what is the nature of a traditionally religious person. We all begin our life as the triangular format. In the triangular format, there is a realization, I am this limited jiva. From the time we wake up in the morning, suddenly we realize there are so much to do. There are so many problems that I have to do. There is so much karma. My prarabdha karma is that the world constantly seems to be throwing problems towards me. And therefore, I pray to Ishvara to help me solve the problem. Those who have been in this class, thanks to the intervention of the Guru, that we have come to Vedanta, and we know from this great verse, Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmana, that means those who have examined their life know one thing for certain, Nirvedyam. There is a frustration in doing the same thing again and again. And what is the knowledge? Vignartham nakrit akrit kritena. That means akritam, the infinite is not obtained through our finite efforts. All we want is limitlessness. And then we come to a guru. So guru meva abhigachet. And once you come to these Vedantic classes, teachers like Swami Paramarthananda introduce us through the Bhagavad Gita teaching Najayate Mriyate Va. That means there is no birth, there is no death for you. Nayam Bhutva Bhavita. You have been there from the very beginning, if there is a beginning, and you will continue to be there till the very end. Ajo Nityaha Sashvatoham Purana Na Hanyate Hanyamane Sharire. You are not this limited body and mind. You are the Atma. You are of the nature of Parabrahma Paramatma. And the more we have this understanding, slowly and slowly, everything that I see and experience, which is my anatma, that is my body-mind complex, my family, my friends, my possession and profession, will come under the domain of objects of my experience. Just like the dreamer sees the dream, and any of the dream events cannot affect me. Now, this should be the understanding. If this understanding is there, then just like in this illustration of Jiva Jagat Ishvara, I see no other way. Otherwise, if you continue in the triangular format. However, the triangular format is so comfortable. It is really difficult to let go our idea of God and the idea of being a manasika sannyasi. That means to be able to relinquish my own body-mind identity and that of my family and my possessions. So how do you work on it? When you have this human mind, we have some knowledge, but not complete knowledge. And that because of this partial knowledge and partial ignorance, there is an identification with this body-mind complex. I know I am a man, I'm an Indian, I'm a doctor and all that. But all that is anatma. I do not know my true nature. I get caught in what is called the hridaya granthi of avidya kama karma. As long as I have avidya, there is a sense of limitations. I don't like limitations. So an idea comes into my mind. That means a desire comes that if I do this, I will become something bigger. So therefore there is karma. Karma leads to punya papa, leads to punarjanma. And that cycle goes on and on. And therefore, this limitations of Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, we have to get over. And how does the teacher help us to get over? They say this Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, however great it and real it may seem to you, they are interdependent. That means during deep sleep, what happens? The Jagat has disappeared, Jiva has disappeared, the Ishvara has disappeared. In Vedanta, anything that comes and goes is not important as that which is always there. So we are trained now to get out of the triangular format through various prakriyas like Panchakosha Viveka, Drik Drishya Viveka, Avastatraya Viveka, and all these help us to move from this body-mind identification to the binary format. What happens in the once you have this binary format, what happens? Does the world disappear? The world does not disappear, but the world now has been reduced to mithya. Just like when a person discovers the gold in bangle, ring, and chain, one realizes one's true nature. So through all these Mahavakyas, we realize and we are trained to claim. The teacher says, Tat Tvam Asi, and the student should respond by saying, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Atma Brahma. Once this idea is there, then the rest of our life is the process of Nididhyasana. Every day we need to train ourselves to work on these 5 capsules. That is the only way we can proceed from the triangular format to the binary format. As I said, it is very difficult to let go that concept of Ishvara, who is there to protect me. It is so comforting to believe that my family, my possessions are all real. But what does the binary format tells us? I am of the nature of eternal and all-pervading consciousness. My true nature is Nityaha, Shuddhaha, Buddhaha, Muktaha, Shivoham, Shivoham, Shiva Swarupaha. And this idea of my true nature should internalize into every cell of my being in my waking state so that it percolates into all other states of my being. Together, Swamiji says, the more you realize you are Atma, I am the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness. And because of this Atma, I'm able to enliven this body. And through this enlivened body, I'm able to experience this material universe. That is the next big understanding, that I am the only true and permanent source of peace, security, and happiness. Everything else is not as real, and it has the problems of Vishayananda. Real liberation comes through the understanding that my true nature is Paramarthika, and therefore anything Vyavahara, if anything happens to my body mind or to the world that I experience, cannot really affect me, just like dream events cannot affect the dreamer who is awake, because asangoham, 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 punah punah. The more I understand, I am Satchidananda Swarupaha. Anything that happens to the world of my experience, including my body, mind, my family, my possessions, my profession, and so on, cannot affect me. And this is what gives us true liberation. Finally, remember the Dakshinamurti symbolism, apasmara, or forgetting. If I forget this, or whenever I forget it, I land into samsara and my life becomes a struggle. By remembering this, I am into moksha. With this background, we will continue our study of the Bhagavad Gita. There is one more important thing that I need to say. And what is that? The more I understand my true nature, mentally, I become a vidvat sannyasi. That means I become a mental sannyasi. And the mental sannyasi tells you what? That my body, my mind, my family, my friends, my work, my possessions are of low order. They cannot really affect me. They are all mithya. And therefore, whenever I have an opportunity to pray, I still continue to pray. But now, no special prayer, because I know any special prayer that I pray for my body, my mental status, my family, my possessions, or so on, which is called Sakama Prarthana, will enhance my Ahankara and Mamakara. Any special prayer only strengthens my ego and pulls me back into the triangular format. So what prayer can we do? Only one prayer, like Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. Now you identify with the total and you pray for the well-being of all. And most importantly, to be able to accept or internalize this truth and to be able to have that level of acceptance. The opening verse today will be explained by Dr. Sundar. Dr. Sundar, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Lord Krishna has summarized the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita no less than 4 times in this chapter. Therefore, this is the summary chapter of the Gita. the verses that concern us today are part of the second summarization of the Gita between the verses 18 and 40. Next slide, sir. So what is unique about this second summarization is, unlike the other summaries where Karma Yoga was given as a prerequisite step for the final step of Jnana Yoga, in this summary, Lord Krishna is explaining 6 items according to their 3 gunas in a 6x3 matrix, so to say. In the previous classes, 3 types of jnanam, 3 types of karma were explained, and now we are proceeding further to 3 types of karta and further. As we see in this next slide, what is the reason Lord Krishna is summarizing in this manner? In the earlier part of this section, we were told that 2 types of vyavahara, jnana and karma vyavahara, concern us. Each of them have a triputi of subject, instrument, and object. That was presented as the reason to summarize in this manner. Towards the end of this section, there is one more strong reason given for this type of summarization. So we can see in this verse that no entity in this entire universe is free from the 3 gunas. Every thought, word, deed, activity, behavior is governed by these. Therefore, we must understand this and use this in our sadhanas. So that explains this peculiar form of summarization in this section. As we shall see in this next slide, this verse, which is first of the set, which describes the 3 types of karta, is about Satvika karta. Satvika karta is one who performs Satvika karma, which was explained in the previous set. So, in a sense, there is repetition. However, Pujya Swamiji points out that Karma Yoga being such an important prerequisite step, for the sake of emphasis, Lord Krishna brings back Karma Yoga as Satvika karma. The meaning of this verse is one who is free from attachment, who is free from egoism, who is endowed with will and enthusiasm, and who is unaffected in success and failure, is said to be a Satvika karta. In this next slide, we see Uchyate is said to be, is called as, is regarded as, is the verb that is used. Satvika karta Uchyate. So who is regarded as a Satvika karta? This is further explained by these 4 important terms in this verse. A Satvika karta is Mukta Sangaha. He is Anahamvadi. He is Dhriti Utsaha Samanvitaha. He is Nirvikaraha. Siddhi Asiddyoho. In this next slide and further, we shall see the understanding behind each of these words. So the first word is Mukta Sangaha. Sangaha is attachment. In the context of this topic, Sangaha is attachment to a particular type of act and a particular type of a result. Let us look at this statement. I do since I like to do and since I like the result. In this statement, it appears normal that any person would do because he likes to do a particular thing and he likes the result. This seems obvious, but not so for a karma yogi. A karma yogi continues to do what he is supposed to do, irrespective of whether he likes to do or whether he likes the result. So one might then question, what could possibly be the motive for karma yogi to continue what he is supposed to do, even though he may not like it sometimes and he may not like the result? The answer for that is the karma yogi or the Satvika karta in this verse, he is anchored to a higher purpose. He is anchored to Ishwararpanam and Ishvara Prasada. He may continue to do the material act and enjoy the material result, irrespective of whether he likes or not, because for him, the joy is in submission to his feet, Ishwararpanam, and acceptance of whatever comes by as Ishvara Prasada. How can we understand that Karma Yogi behaves in this manner? Ishvara, in the term Ishvara Prasada and Ishvara Arpana, the Karma Yogi sees as Vishwarupa Ishvara. He sees Ishvara as the totality. One way to look at it is all acts are Vishwarupa Ishvara, all results are Vishwarupa Ishvara. When Ishvara is all, how can Karma Yogi pick and be attached to a particular act? And how can he pick a particular result and be attached to it? Therefore, a Karma Yogi renounces this narrow understanding of attachment to a particular act and particular result. This is what is Mukta Sangaha. In this next slide, let us see what is the understanding of the word Anahamvadi. Ahamvadi is a person who is sa ahankara, meaning who has the notion of I and mine. Anahamvadi, on the other hand, is nirahankara. He is free from the notion of I and mine. Again, it is seen as normal to have the notion of I and mine. How and why does the Karma Yogi or the Satvika karta not have this notion of I and mine? Again, as we saw earlier, his understanding of Ishvara is as Vishwarupa Ishvara. Everything belongs to him. My possessions, my people, to the extent of my body and my own mind belong to Vishwarupa Ishvara. How can I then have the notion of I and mine? In a sense, having the notion of I and mine is usurping the property that belongs to him, Vishwarupa Ishvara, and stealing what belongs to him and claiming as I and mine is served with the punishment of samsara karagraha. Therefore, the Satvika karta is anahamvadi. In this next slide, let us see what is the understanding of dhriti utsaha samanvitaha. Normal meaning is that the Satvika karta or karma yogi is filled with determination and enthusiasm. This is because all work is a submission of his feet. At his feet, all work is God's work. Therefore, he has determination and enthusiasm. This becomes more important when the material results may not be favorable to him. Even in that case, his enthusiasm is unfaltered. In the Bhashyam, a slightly different meaning is given to these two words, that this is effort and continued effort. And in that understanding, a karma yogi never gives up. He continues till the results are achieved. In this slide, next slide, the last definition which is given here is nirvikaraha. Karma yogi, Satvika karta, is mentally tranquil. He always maintains mental balance. He avoids violent emotional reactions. Now, we can go back to the first definition of Karma Yoga we had in the second chapter, which is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Karma Yogi has having equanimity with regard to act, because whatever be the material act for him, Ishwararpanam is more important. He's having equanimity to the material result, because material result, whether it is success or failure, he is accepting it cheerfully as Ishvara Prasada. Born of this equanimity is this mental tranquility. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sundar, for an excellent explanation of this verse, which talks about what is Satvika karta. And it is our request that you come more often. We would like to listen to you. You have a different perspective of these verses. All of us would like to be a Satvika karta. And therefore, as explained, one should be free from the attachment to the sense of any form of an attachment to whatever I am doing, be free from ego, work with a lot of enthusiasm, and not be really affected by the outcome, by the success or failure. The next verse will be discussed by another plastic surgeon who's already spoken to us, Dr. Sachin. Dr. Sachin, please.
Hari Om, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse goes like this. Ragi karma pala prepsuhu lupto himsat makau suchihi harsha shokanvita karta rajasa parikirtitah. Rajasic doer is said to be one who has attachment, who is desirous of his actions, results of action, who is greedy, harmful, impure, and subject to elation and depression. The next slide. We have seen the recently concluded World Cup, and we have seen two teams playing. The first team, Italy, could not win the World Cup. So it seems to a collective failure. The next team, sir, please, next slide, sir. The next team is Argentina, who won the World Cup. So it seems to be a success. But in the next slide, we see the success and failure is a relative term. Swamiji says that failing is the first step to success. So a Sathvik person, we already saw, he doesn't get attached to anything which comes for his action. And a Rajasic person is always dependent upon what is the result of his action. So as we see in the next slide, people who are successful take every failure as stepping stone for their final outcome or success. And even if they get success, they doesn't go in their head. They just learn from their failure or success and move ahead. And with that, we come to the Rajasic personality, which we see in the next slide. Next slide shows qualities of Rajasic person. Ragi, who is attached to his desires. Karma phala prepsuha. More than the inner growth, he's interested is in the outer world and outer growth. And he's attached to the external success, like name, fame, and his success. He is the karmi and not a karma yogi. In the next slide, we see the few more qualities. He's lubdaha, greedy as well as miserly person, who wants to get more and more from society and gives very less and less to society. As we see in this example of a loaded truck. Whenever there is a huge load, when we don't do dhanam or charity in a right way, we go on accumulating things. A Rajasic personality is just like that, greedy as well as miserly. But we all know what would happen to this loaded truck. It won't go ahead. Definitely, it will have a fall. Similarly, a Rajasic personality, a Rajasic doer, will spiritually fall down. And the next slide we see, he becomes himsa. So he will start violating dharma. To get his work done, he will go to any extent. So himsatmakam, he will violate dharma again and again. He will be threat to society. And his life will be tension-ridden, asuchihi. And whose mind will be so violent, it will go up and down. So such a personality is a Rajasic personality. And he always relies for his happiness, peace, security on the external world, which is a wrong thing to do. To get permanent happiness, peace, and security, you have to anchor on the inner world, find the inner higher self. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin, for giving us a clear explanation of verse 27, which is talking just the reverse of what Dr. Sundar explained earlier. Satvika karma is what is a Rajasic karta. Now, a Rajasika karta is driven by ragi, driven by passion. He desires the fruits of action. He is greedy and is ready to do violent methods to accomplish whatever. And therefore, such a person can have a very roller coaster life. And this is the story of a Rajasic karta. What is a Tamasic karta? Karthik, please.
Gurubhyo Namaha. We are now, as we have been into the session, we are talking about the summary of the Gita based on gunas, guna bedataha. So here we talk about the karta-based disposition, and this sloka talks about the tamasika karta. Next slide, Doctor. Now, as an aside, this whole thing, this whole section of the Gita is you can say a lift off of the the Sankhya philosophy propounded by Kapila. I mean, we do, as a Vedantin, we do take things that are not contrary to as doctor said earlier, the binary format. Now, we saw how a Sathvik karta and Rajasic karta go about their karma. Now we'll see a Tamasa karta, his disposition and qualities. Now, next slide, doctor. Krishna gives 8 qualities of the Tamasika karta. We'll take it one by one later on. But the point to be remembered is such a Tamasika karta needs to be directed towards Rajasa karma as a remedy. Now the shloka is there. It's just a list of qualities and we'll see one by one. Next slide, doctor. Krishna is describing the characteristics of a Tamasika karta. It is the longest list of the 3 types of kartas. Even if we take a long time to cultivate sattvic qualities, it is fine. But we should strive to reduce and eventually eliminate any trace of these tamasic characteristics within us. Not only will it hold us back in the spiritual path, but it will become a detriment even to our even to success in our material world. The first of these qualities is ayuktaha. It's not an integrated personality. Such a person is disturbed. The kosha personalities, the first 4 koshas, the annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya, and buddhimaya are in our work counter each other, are disintegrated. So such a person, he is loose at all levels, physical, mental, intellectual. He doesn't care what should be done and what should not be done. There is no program, there is no schedule for anything, anytime. He gets up whenever he wants to get up. He eats what he wants. He says what he wants. He thinks what he allows his mind to think. He allows loose at all levels. There is no restriction. There is no filter in any of his activities. No censorship. The next word is prakritaha, immature. The one whose mind is not at all refined. The opposite of samskrita refers to a mind that is uncultured, uncouth, without proper values, and there is no ability to think logically. Now, tamasic doership, if we can call it that, comes from a tamasic vision, which always persists, which always hangs on perversely to one particular object, viewpoint, person, or situation. Therefore, the mind becomes stabdaha, that is irreverent, that is not respectful, unbending, unyielding, stubborn, arrogant even. Now we move on to some more dangerous qualities or characteristics, so to say. A tamasic mind will not stop at anything to accomplish its task. It will be shataha, very, very deceptive. He can be so deceptive that he can present himself as though he is not deceptive. In other words, he is an imposter. He has a hidden agenda behind every action, which contradicts his expressed intention. It weakens the individual progressively, both spiritually and physically, because of the tremendous strain it brings about. This type of mind, a tamasika mind, will also resort to creating a negative environment for others. It will be a naishkritika, intent upon destroying somebody, cruel. Not only does he lack specific goals, he also is malicious. He hinders another's pursuit of goals. He enters others' space with criticism. And if asked a question, it is only deconstructive feedback that comes from him. The next slide, doctor. Conversely, if the task is not up to its liking, the tamasic mind will be alasaha, completely lazy, does not want to do any action at all. And whatever he wants to get done, he'll ask others to do. And because of his laziness, he is not capable of doing the things that are to be done. He avoids nishiddha karma, kamya karma, prayaschitta karma, and even nitya naimitika karma. He refuses. And so there is a lot of pratyavaya papa that he earns regularly. Now, next, the tamasic mind will always remain in a state of vishada. Vishada is actually a low mood. He is not in a mood to do anything. Avasannaha means low. That is what it says in the Bhashya. He is without enthusiasm, no interest to do anything, and is always given to sadness. See, sadness or depression is not a bad thing as long as one is addressing it. In that case, the person is Satvika. But if one doesn't address the problem, tamas is predominant. Here we have a person who is more or less always depressed, but does not do anything about it. Even if someone tells him what to do about it, he'll postpone doing that because he is a dhirga sutri, a procrastinator. The tamasic mind will always find ways to pawn off the task to someone else by procrastinating. Now, there's a funny thing. Dhirga sutri means a long string or a long length. So the things that are to be done, he does not do, but postpones day by day. Shankaracharya says, what is to be done today or tomorrow, he does not do even in a month. An exemplar of procrastinator. This is all because he has a disposition which is dull, and he is called a tamasa karta. With this, all the three topics are over: jnana, karma, and karta. All of them threefold. Gurubhyo Namah.
Thank you very much, Karthik, for giving us a very clear explanation of what is this tamasa karta. Now, all of us are karta, and we always tend to feel tamasa is somebody else. I am either Rajasic or Sathvik. But we know Daivi Sampat and there is the Asuri Sampat. And this is the danger that I can be driven by tamas. I can be driven by laziness. I can be driven by procrastination. We know that there is there all the time. I can be stubborn. I can be cunning. I can be undisciplined. I can be unrefined. And therefore, this is an important warning for all of us as a karta not to be driven by tamasa karta. We now make a shift, and the next verse will be explained by Dr. Sandhya. Dr. Sandhya, please.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Lord Krishna goes on to explain how understanding and fortitude can also be subjected to the threefold classification as per the predominating guna, Satvika, Rajasic or Tamasic. Chanting the verse, Buddher Bedam Dhriteschaiva Gunatas Trividam Shunu Prochyamanam Asheshena Pritakwena Dhananjaya. This is the introduction to the Trividam Bedam classification into three types of buddhi. The intellect or reasoning, and dhriti, firmness or fortitude, willpower, based on the gunataha or predominance of each guna. Krishna says, O Arjuna, listen to the threefold division of the intellect and of will according to the gunas, taught by me, prochyamanam, completely, aseshena, and distinctly, pritaktven. When an actor, the karta, guided by his intellect, by his knowledge, jnanam, comes to act in this world, do karma, whatever work is done gets manifested as karma. But the two underlying factors that provide the fuel or the motive force or act as catalysts for this jnanam, karta, and karma are buddhi and dhriti. Buddhi or understanding is an intellectual capacity to grasp all that is happening around us, the faculty of determination. It can also be called antakarana. So jnana motivates action, and buddhi is one of the constituents of action. That is, it is the karana, the inner instrument. Dhriti is fortitude or will, and it is the faculty of holding on to a particular pursuit, belief, or idea. Consistency of purpose without allowing oneself to mentally vacillate or wander. So when we undertake an action, it is guided by our intellectual capacity of understanding, that is the buddhi, and its faithful consistency of purpose.
remembering Swami Vivekananda's words and applying it to when we are on the spiritual path. Take up one idea, make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let every part of your body be full of that idea and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success. This is what dhriti is all about. We have seen in verse 26, in the description of the Sathvik doer, the karta, the word drishti utsaha samanvitaha, one who is endowed with firmness and enthusiasm. Does this mean that drishti is Sathvik only? That is not so. There are three kinds of drishti, as we will see in the following verses. So in this introductory verse of buddhi and dhriti, Krishna's intention is to point out that only the Sathvik types are worth cultivating and the Rajasic and Tamasic types need to be given up. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya, because here Shri Krishna is giving us, there is a change of topic. He says, now listen to the threefold differences between what is buddhi, what is dhriti, and I will classify them based upon their gunas very clearly. This is just an introductory verse. We come to the last verse for today's class, and that will be explained to us by Kirti. Kirti, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Chapter 18, verse 30. Pravritim cha nivritim cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham cha ya vetti buddhihi sa partha satviki. Translation: that intellect which knows the path of work and renunciation, what to be done and what ought not to be done, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, that understanding is Satvika, O Arjuna. Swami Chinmayananda explains that buddhi or intellect has various functions like knowing, observing, analyzing, classifying, remembering, willingness, and so on. And yet, the one essential function in all of them is the power of discrimination, also called the faculty of right understanding. Without discrimination, proper observation, analysis, classification, judgment, right action is never possible. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna helped Arjuna to develop his power of discrimination. Swami Paramarthananda says, in the Kathopanishad, buddhi is compared to the driver. He says the driver must be informed and also the driver must be sober, meaning one must strive to be intellectually enlightened, emotionally balanced, with clarity regarding the means for immediate and ultimate goals for success in life. That is, knowledge and understanding of the traditionally taught Chaturvida Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Verse 18.30 defines the Sattvic intellect and its capacity to discriminate the following four factors. Pravritim cha nivritim cha. Sattvic buddhi's true understanding has the ability to discriminate between actions that are to be pursued, pravriti, and actions that are to be shunned, nivriti, for spiritual growth. Pravriti means karma marga. Swamiji says, understanding about what karma can achieve and what karma cannot achieve. This clarity must be there. Otherwise, one will not intelligently utilize karma. After all, karma is a means, and to use means properly, one has to know what this instrument can do and what it can't do. Nivritim means gnana marga, the path of knowledge, meaning understanding regarding the truth of oneself, the truth of the world, the truth of God, and the power of knowledge, and then renunciation of some actions. Karya, akarya. Karyam is that which is to be done for spiritual growth, and akaryam which should be avoided if one is interested in spiritual growth. There are karmas which give money, status, power, name, respect in society, but they are unfriendly and are an obstacle to spiritual growth. Sathvik buddhi is able to identify them, reduce or avoid them, however tempting they may be, with knowledge, understanding, and conviction. Bhaya abhaya. One of the things that every human being seeks is security. Swamiji says there is a fundamental sense of bhayam, insecurity and fear right from birth, because of which one holds on to their mother, then thumb sucking, then worry for security of self, family, acquiring possessions for more security. That means insecurity seems to be a lingering thought which continues till old age. Abhayam or fearlessness is that which is a source of security. What does this mean? We are not clear regarding what is the source of security and what is the cause of insecurity. Many things one thought to be a source of security, they find it is not. What then is the source of security? Whatever is secure in itself, that alone can give one security. Therefore, the only source of security is the ever secure one, the immortal, infinite one alone, which we call God or Brahman. World can never give security. This clarity, bhaya abhaya jnanam, the one which Sathvik intellect has. Then bandham moksham. Bandha means the cause of bondage, and moksham means the cause of liberation from bandha. Our misconception is dependence on the external world will give me strength, happiness, and freedom. But the fact is, dependence on external factors, attachment, dvaitam, is bondage. Tyaga gives one freedom, not acquisition. Therefore, one who is not a Sathvik intellect is lifelong groping in fear, dependence, bondage, and experimentation, tossed among dualities. Sattva guna, which is the mode of goodness, illumines the intellect with light of knowledge and discrimination. Sattvic intellect is mukta sangaha, having an understanding of Purusha, Prakriti, Viveka. Play of trigunas of Prakriti on Gnana Triputi and Karma Triputi, and thereby their actions are done with Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Prasada Buddhi. They do their duty with Samatvam and Dhriti under all conditions, free from Ahankara, the pride of doership, with a superior kind of renunciation situated in the mode of goodness. And the ultimate goal, moksha, becomes within their reach. Thank you, sir. Harihi Om.
Thank you very much, Kirti, for giving us a very detailed, comprehensive explanation of a very important verse 30 of the 18th chapter, which talks about Satvika Buddhi. If you see, our intellect is our real me. And therefore, it is so important that the intellect is Satvik. Because if the intellect is Rajasic, the intellect is Tamasic, that was what indicates our real nature. We have listened to a detailed explanation, and this is a verse worth studying, and to be able to see how we can move from Rajasic and Tamasic and to be able to identify with the Sathvik Buddhi. We will have a chanting of these verses that we have studied today by Pranav. Pranav, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Mukta Sango Naham Vadihi Dhrutyutsaha Samanvitaha Siddhya Siddhyo Nirvikaraha Karta Satvika Uchyate Ragi Karma Phala Prepsuhu Lubdho Himsatmako Shuchihi Harsha Shokanvita Karta Rajasah Parikirtitaha Ayuktah Prakrutastapdaha Shato Naishkritiko Lasaha Vishadi Dhirga Shutricha karta tamasa uchyate buddhe bhedam dhruteshchaiva gunatastrividam shrunu प्रोच्यमाणमशेषेण पृथक्त्वेन धनञ्जय प्रवृत्तिञ्च निवृत्तिञ्च कार्याकार्ये भयाभये बन्धं मोक्षं च या वेत्ति बुद्धिः सा पार्थ सात्विकी हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम.
Thank you, dear Pranav, for the wonderful, flawless chanting. Our sincere gratitude, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, for hand-holding us and ensuring that we are on the right path. Heartfelt thanks to all the speakers for an insightful presentation. Team Param Vedanta thanks each one of you for your encouraging participation and feedback about our sessions. Our next session on Monday, the 27th of February, is the 48th session of Disha for discovery of inner strength and happiness at 6:45 p.m. Verses 19 to 42 of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga will be discussed along with Bhakti Yoga topic of Tattva Bodha. We conclude today's session with our usual prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Krishnam Vande Jagadguru.